if you're not in a place where you can hold the other person, whether it be, friend, partner, you're actually doing them a disservice by saying yes and putting their stuff on, because you're not that clean coach or counselor or family member. And by taking that on top of when you're already at capacity, that can actually, I believe, damage relationships, because you're seeing that through the filter of what you've also got going on.
Hello, and welcome back to You Need a Counselor podcast. My name is Dr. Julie Johnson. I am the president and founder here at Heart and Solutions in Iowa, in the United States. I feel like I always have to say that now, as we are interviewing people from all over the globe. And how great is technology when it works, because it allows us to connect with people who can help us from all over the world, and it allows us to get help from people and support from people that are all over the globe. So how wonderful. So if you are in Iowa and you're looking for outpatient mental health counseling, go ahead and give us a call at Heart and Solutions. We are doing telehealth services for anybody that lives in Iowa, but we are also doing in-person sessions in any of our 6 office locations.
And I'm Chrissa Hunt. I am the Vice President at Heart and Solutions, in charge of our BHIS department. So BHIS stands for Behavioral Health Intervention Services. And that is our program where we go in home and work with children 4 through 18 years old on different behaviors. And we can also see them in the office, in school, or telehealth right now as well. And this is our podcast, You Need a Counselor. So we are designed for people curious about counseling, but have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
All right. So we post on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. So we encourage you to batch up your laundry, put away all your clean clothes into little outfits, sort of all your little socks together on Sunday nights with us. Chrissa and I will be doing the same thing. You'll see us in clean clothes throughout the week, because we've got that Sunday night carved out to listen to the new episode with you. That gives you the entire week to get scheduled with your counselor, or to get in touch with any of our wonderful guests from the week and get connected with their services and their wonderful resources. So today we've got an awesome guest here with us from Australia. And, Chrissa, the first coach that we ever interviewed was named Suzanne. And she was a money coach. Yes. And helped people with money. And we've gotten to interview quite a lot of coaches over the last couple of years, because coaching and counseling go so well together when used effectively and appropriately, where everybody kind of knows what their role is with the person that we're trying to help, and we can work together to help them meet their goals. So excited to have a coach and author with us today. We've got Suzanne Culberg with us today. Hi, Suzanne.
Hello, Julie and Chrissa. Nice to meet you.
Yes, great to meet you. And thank you so much for being here with us today.
You're welcome.
So let me talk a little bit about Suzanne. So Suzanne has a program called Why Wait? But just like we've seen last week, we saw, time spelled T-Y-M-E. We've got Why Wait, and it's Y, W-H-Y, and then wait, W-8. So we're excited to hear about this program as well. Suzanne is an author and a coach. And I know we've talked on this show about the difference between coaches and counselors and how the two work so very well together, because we're not the same profession. We're not supposed to be. Your doctor and your attorney, right? They're not doing the same things for you, but they're both helpful to you as they're working together for your overall wellness and your overall growth as a person. So Suzanne we're excited to hear about her wacky t-shirts. We are excited.
I'm wearing one today. I'll show you after.
Are you? What does it say, Suzanne?
Today says, maybe this is not the right podcast for this one. It's like, there's an explanation, of course. I'm a terrible person, and it's got Cruella de Vil on it. Hang on, I'll see if you can see it.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
That's funny.
I mean, it's just as good an explanation as any, I suppose. It's honest, right? And one of the things that you're known for is that you're honest. You're very direct. And hey, if somebody's willing to say I'm a terrible person and that's why I'm doing something, that's very honest and very direct. So welcome to the show, Suzanne. So you are a coach and an author, and one of your specialties is helping people overcome people pleasing, overgiving, and helping people to establish boundaries. So can you tell us a little bit about what it is that you do and why you do it?
So first off, I want to say I have to go back and find your episode about the difference between coaching and counseling. I love hearing different perspectives on that. And I just want to echo what you said. They work really well hand in hand, but they are very different modalities. And I just love that because sometimes people do use them interchangeably. And it's like, no, the terms. And I just love that so much. So basically, I was the premier people pleaser, doormat, yes woman, kind of, as many of us are. Mm-hmm. And it was really hard to say no to other people because I didn't want to let people down, or I didn't want to be seen as mean or uncaring, or I felt this sense of like obligation. And also, although I am very direct and honest, I'm also very generous. But there is a difference. Like there's a difference between coaching and counseling. There's a difference between being generous and overgiving. And there's that nuance because generosity, you're not attached. When you're coming into overgiving territory, you feel like, and also you have to be mindful of it in yourself because you feel entitled. Like you feel like, well, they got this because I gave them the opportunity, or because I gave them this, then you kind of expect something in return. And it can be a murky line to cross, but when we do things out of a sense of, obligation or expecting something in return, that's the very definition of people pleasing. And when we see people pleasing as not just like, I'm such a nice person, but actually there's a little bit of manipulation there. It takes a level of honesty with self to see. It's like, oh, yeah, no, I don't want to be like this. So sometimes people are affronted by my total honesty now. But for me, it's really, really freeing because it takes me out of that meek, quiet, yeah, sure, I'll do this. And from there, my business was born. And I think for me, it became becoming a mother and realizing, oh, I don't want my children to pick up on these habits, or I don't want to martyr for them. Like I love doing things for my children to a point, but I also love doing things for me. And there are times where I'm just like, no, we're not going to do this, and not feeling like I'm a terrible person or having mum guilt. I have time for them and I have time for me, and finding that healthy balance.
Absolutely. I love what you're saying about the difference between generosity and overgiving, because generosity, we do with a joyful spirit and with a joyful heart. And generosity is the feedback that I'm getting, or the gift that I'm getting, isn't coming from the person I'm giving to. It's coming from my action of being generous. And when we overgive, it's a transactional type of relationship. And so then, even if all I'm wanting as my payback, right, is that you be very, very appreciative of me and you think I'm wonderful, right? If that's what I'm expecting as payback, and sometimes we overgive and we think we're being generous, but we expect that, like, oh my gosh, thank you, you've helped me so much, or oh my gosh, you're wonderful. Or we expect that the next time we need something, that we're investing right into that next favor. And it's very transactional. And that is a huge setup for resentment in relationships. That will tear a relationship right apart. If I am, and you mentioned, being a mother and doing things for our children, if I give my daughter a snack and then she throws a fit about the snack, and I'm like, hey, I bought you that snack, right? That's a transactional relationship. And it's not that I find joy in nourishing my daughter, right, which is a generosity situation. But in overgiving, I expect her to behave for the next 30 minutes, 3 days, a week, if I give her a treat or I give her an outing or I give her, something special. And so there is such a difference between that overgiving. The overgiving expects something in return. There's payback for everything that we do. There's reward for every action that we do. And we're either seeking that reward or we're avoiding pain, right? So
yes.
So there's got to be, and there's payoff in both, in overgiving and in generosity. The difference being that when we're being generous, that payoff, that reward is within ourselves. It doesn't matter how the other person responds or reacts to what we're doing or saying or doing for them or giving them. We're doing it for ourselves, and the payoff comes from ourselves, from internal. And when we're overgiving, we're expecting somebody else to give us that payoff, that reward.
I love that. The internal, external, it's perfect, because when you are generous and you give somebody something, like you give your daughter the snack and she doesn't like it, you're like you're not attached to it. You're like, what is she thinking? This is amazing. Whereas when it's overgiving, it's like, I spent how long in the kitchen, or I spent how much money on this, and you don't. And it's like, oh, you're expecting that external reward to validate you. But when you're generous, you're validating yourself. You're like, this is the best thing ever. So I think there's the energy of that. And even within the same gift or the same offering, it can depend on the day. It can depend where you're at. Like I'm an author, as I said, and I've given people my book before and been like, and they're like not really interested or whatever. I'm like, oh, well, they're lost. My book's amazing. And other times I've been like, scratching my head, within the same thing. So it's like where you're at and what you have going on can shift the action. So it's not necessarily the activity, but your internal state that can shift from the overgiving energy to the generous energy within the same thing. Because like I'm sure we've all done it before. You've done something, it's felt amazing, and you've been like, oh, I want that kind of like hit, or I want that. And you do the same thing and you're like, well, it didn't feel the same as last time, because then when you did it the first time, it was that place of generosity, or you'll have that good feeling in yourself. And the second time you're trying to recreate it, you're looking for that external payback to, do your own inner work.
Absolutely. What a great, and you mentioned, we had talked about reward and avoiding fear. And you had mentioned that fear of being mean, or that fear of presenting as being mean when we set those boundaries. And I think with people pleasing and with overgiving, it sounds like we're doing both. We're looking for that reward, which sets us up for resentment when other people don't give us the reward we want. And then we're avoiding that fear, or we're avoiding that pain of feeling mean. Tell me more about that feeling mean and how we set boundaries or say no without feeling like a bad guy, without feeling like Cruella de Vil.
Yeah. It's such a good thing, because when you're unattached to it and I think it has a lot to do with how you're feeling inside, because sometimes I can say no and go on about my merry way, and other times I can say no and then feel mean, as I said, once again, in the exact same circumstance. And it's just like, I think when you're feeling healthy and fulfilled or nourished inside yourself, then you trust in that other person's capability to get their needs met. Like, it's not on you. So if someone's like, hey, Suze, can you help me with this? And I'm like, not today, and I'm feeling fulfilled, I'll be like, well, they can go ask someone else. But if I'm in any way feeling needy, or like, I can't quite get the language to it, but I think people understand that inner feeling of, the savior energy, like it's down to me, and we can become overly responsible. Then when we say no, especially the kids do this really well, and they're not intentionally manipulative. They're young and their brains haven't fully formed yet. But it's like, can I have this lolly? No. Sometimes that's the end of it. And other times, but please, someone was mean to me at school today. Or I'm just, and then it just pulls at the heartstrings and you're feeling really, really mean. So you can just, you can give in, but then you're setting yourself up for a whole lot of problems later on. So it's the depending on the age of the person you're interacting with, and, the boundaries that you have in place and uphold. Like, for me personally, my friends, if I have something going on, that they want to vent or whatever, like the boundary I have is they kind of have to ask first. Like, I'm not an emotional dumping ground. Don't dump your stuff on me. So it's kind of like asking. And sometimes I have the capacity. I've got time. Let's go. And other times I'm like, just not today, because I've got to check in with my own stuff and where I'm at and what I have going on. And I used to feel really, really mean about that. But it's like, if you're not in a place where you can hold the other person, whether it be, you know, friend, partner, you're actually doing them a disservice by saying yes and putting their stuff on, because you're not that clean coach or counselor or family member. And by taking that on top of when you're already at capacity, that can actually, I believe, damage relationships, because you're seeing that through the filter of what you've also got going on. And, you know, it's a lot cleaner and nicer to say no than to say yes when you can't actually be that place for them.
Absolutely. Emotional energy it's a real it's not, you can't feel it, but it is a real resource, and we have a limited amount of it. It's not endlessly flowing. We have a limited amount. We have to recharge it, and then we have that set amount to spend, and then we have more. And I love what you're saying about it is kinder to say no in those situations, because gosh, if Chrissa and I are checking into a hotel and I've got my arms full and Chrissa says, "Can you hold this bag?" and I say, "Yeah," and then but I can't, and I dump her makeup all over the floor, right? It would have been kinder to say no. It would have been
do
better
2
to
trips.
say no. Yeah.
Or let her ask someone else.
Absolutely, to do 2 trips, right? To do the recharge and then come back with the capacity to hold more things. And so I love what you're saying about it feels mean to say no at times, depending on where we are. And I love that you focus on it depends on where we are, because so often it's so tempting, and all of these things, we all do them. It is so tempting to think, well, I did this and I've done it before and I felt fine. And then I did it here. What changed? And we think it's the other person, right? Or we think it's the situation, because, well, when I did it here, they were very grateful to me, right? And they were very this and that, and it worked out great when I did it over here. And we have a tendency to blame that change in how we feel on the situation, when the truth is that we're different in that moment. When we said yes over here, we were different when we said yes over here. We did it for a different reason. Even though by all means that other people could see or observe in us, it looks exactly the same.
I love that, because it looks the same. And also sometimes there can be an assumption from people, well, they said yes before, so they kind of assume, and in this circumstances, no. And then that can be a conversation about being mean. So I can think of an example. I'm a coach, I run a group program. There have been times where somebody has brought to the table, to the coaching container, something that's beyond the scope of what is in this program. Like I would say, the name of your program, your podcast, you need a counselor. If somebody is hurting or triggered, activated in that moment, and then you're saying to them, hey, you need a counselor, that can be very badly received and go really badly, because it can feel, I imagine, on the receiving end of that, like you're washing the hands of them, like, I can't help you, go away. And so they say in coaching, an ounce of pre-framing is worth a pound of reframing. So every round of my program and every client that I work with, and time to time as I'm working with them, I reminder, this is what I do. I take you from where you are now to where you want to go. Sometimes things that come up or may activate that are beyond the coaching container, that you may need other services for, because coaching is a circle of support. It's not a salvation. And I think we all need to craft for ourselves a lush ecosystem of support, because sometimes we can put all of our eggs into one basket and bring everything to that person, but we need, because what happens if you do that and then the coaching container ends, you kind of left without a rift. So basically it's because the person cares so much that they're encouraging you to get support elsewhere, not because they don't care about you and think, well, you're just too much. So it's knowing the scope with anything. Like I know you guys are talking at the beginning of the intro, and Chris was saying you work with children, and Julie, I imagine it was adults, but and sometimes there's crossover. Both of my children see therapists, and I didn't know a whole lot about it when I took them to see them, and they're like, no, you see a different person in our practice. Like it's best, I don't know what you guys do there, but for the family, because we develop this relationship and we don't want any crossover, I'm sure you guys can explain it better. And I was like, so they have the practice and they have different, counselors for different people within the family. So there isn't any of that, mismatch. And I thought, that's just brilliant.
Yeah.
It really is. And I love the parallel between, when you're building up your team of support and when okay, this is my coach, and I am working with my coach, Suzanne, on my ability to set boundaries. I need some help exploring it. I need some help with practical things I can do, right? I need to talk through some things. At the same time, I might know, okay, I'm talking to Suzanne about my boundaries and about my overgiving. But part of why I am, and maybe a big part of why I overgive, is because I've got so much anxiety. Maybe I have social anxiety, maybe I have generalized anxiety disorder. And I've got so much anxiety that the fear of saying no, or the fear of disappointing somebody, or maybe it's a trauma response because it wasn't safe to say no at some point in my life. And so the fear that we talked about earlier, I'm avoiding that fear by saying yes and doing all the things and being everything for every person. And so I'm going to go to my counselor and I'm going to process through that anxiety. I'm going to process through that trauma. And I'm going to process through the social anxiety aspect of it, maybe, right? All the while working with Suzanne on my boundary settings and building my confidence in myself about being able to do that.
Yeah, and it works so well. It's like that multidisciplinary approach. It's like, if you have an injury and you see a physio and then you see maybe a chiropractor, or maybe, you see you are tackling this from different angles to get the best result. And the other thing too is sometimes it's not as clear with people, well, what can I bring to each of my different, support teams? And how I described it the other day, because I got this exact question. I was like, imagine you're on Ninja Warrior. I laugh because I'm in no way fit. But like people get the example. And when you see, they often have a little trampette before they jump onto the obstacle. And it's like kind of bring it to the space and kind of like, put the trampette thing there. And then allow the coach or counselor or whoever to say, yeah, yes, let's go deeper. Let's like bounce on this and get onto the obstacle. Or be like, actually, I can see that and this is really important. This is beyond the scope of the work. So do you have on your support team somebody who does this? And if they do, great. And if they don't, and somebody you can refer. And if you don't know somebody, like there's so many different modalities out there that, I'm aware of, but I don't do myself. And I think sometimes, when we're running into our overgiving energy as coaches, therapists, helpers, we want to like tread where we shouldn't. And I just remember, no, trampoline. We're going to go splat if we do this. So it's like in the best interest of both of us to, know your scope of work.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I love that. There are so many boundaries and ethical codes and barriers on mental health counseling that coaches just don't have to deal with. And so there are so many times where absolutely somebody will come in for mental health therapy and we go, yeah. And we do a diagnostic assessment and we go, yep, you've got a diagnosis. We're going to work with you. But there are certain things that we need as humans that a mental health counselor is not allowed by law to give you, to do for you. And whereas your coach is able to do those things. And so we might be trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, right? For something that is a need of yours. Whereas a coach might be that round peg for that round hole, and we can still go in and fill in the square ones. But your coach needs to fill in those circle ones, and your dentist needs to fill in the triangles, because
You know what
we
comes to
can't be all
mind?
the things. Perfection.
Have you seen that do you guys have Tupperware over there? Like the plastic, that Shape-O thing, like the ball with the different shapes on the outside that the kids play with. And it's like, this is the coaching shape, and this is the counseling shape, and this is the doctor shape, and this is the personal trainer shape.
Yeah.
And it's like the right piece fits, and otherwise you're trying to jam something in that doesn't quite fit. And I think sometimes when we and we can do that as a client too, it's like, well, can't you do this like to the person that we've hired to support us? And because we've developed a relationship, and developing a relationship with another person, there's trust and time and all this. But it's like, actually, if you put it in, I love metaphors obviously, but like if you go to a brain surgeon and you're like, can you operate on my heart, there's going to be a problem there.
Yeah. And I find that with coaches too, all of the coaches that we've interviewed on this show, and yourself included, have some kind of specialty, have some kind of focus. And so, somebody who is coping with financial difficulty, for example, might go see the first coach we ever interviewed, Suzanne, who was a money coach.
The other Suzanne.
Right? And might go talk to her about budgeting, but might come talk to you about, okay, but I want to stay on budget this Christmas, but all of my family members expect gifts. All of the, I feel like I need to give gifts to all the teachers because I did it all before, right? I feel like I need to spend this much money on this child's gift and this child's gift and this child's gift. And that's where the boundaries can come into any kind of situation, and being able to, and they could come see you to help figure out, okay, how do I say no to that person, right? And then might simultaneously be seeing their therapist and talking to their therapist about like, this trauma happened, it was associated with this person, or I didn't have presence as a child, right? And so now I feel like I'm trying to do that for my childhood self. And so all of these pieces all come together when the goal is, I want to stay on budget this Christmas, right? But all three, two coaches and a therapist, and maybe a marriage therapist as well, because, you and your partner might have different thoughts on gifts for their family and your family and the spending for the holiday. So many people can come together for one person or one family and be able to come at it from all those different angles and help with even just that one goal.
Oh, 100%. And I laugh when you said money, because I have a money coach who's also recently started coaching with me. So it's like we both, and I think that's the thing with any sort of, it's never a teacher student or a lecture. It's not a top down thing. It's like we're all at a round table together, and like, this is my speciality, like boundaries, and this is their speciality, money, and this is somebody else's speciality, like just so many things. And it's funny, none of them are coming to mind right now, but it's like I've had a whole host of coaches at the same time, and it's working together. Sometimes though, I just say for anybody listening, my mind, because I've done this, I can use going to different people to actually avoid, buffer, numb doing the work. Because it's like, well, if I go to this person and they tell me this, and I can indulge in confusion because then this person said this and this person said this. For the individual, it's like, I can't talk my way out of actually doing some sort of practice tool, whether it be, journaling or having a difficult conversation or doing the thing that you're seeing the therapist or coach for, because I can buffer, numb out with coaching as much as the next person. So it's actually being mindful that you're using this to get you closer to the goal and not as a way to indulge in overwhelm.
I love that. Absolutely. In therapy and in coaching, the work of it, the work that we do as the client in coaching or in therapy, the work can happen in session. The work primarily happens outside of session because, I still got to be me the rest of the week. And so the work has to happen, whether it's in session, outside of session, hopefully both. But the session is not the work.
Yes.
The session
it's like
is,
personal
let's get
training.
to
I
work.
used to be a
Yeah.
personal trainer. If you come and I
Oh.
exercise with you for 1 hour a week, that's 1 hour of a week. What about the rest of the time? With therapy or with coaching, yes, there will be work in session, but sometimes a lot of my clients, and I imagine yours too, might put off coming back because they haven't done the work. And if that's the case, no. We want to unpack why you haven't done it, because we all know what it's like to make a plan, set the plan. This is going to be great. And then you get home and you're like, oh, now I've actually got to do it. But bring that to your coach, your therapist, whoever you're working with, and work through that, because under that resistance is gold.
Absolutely. There's work to be done about why we don't do the work.
Yes.
Absolutely. And sometimes it is. We're not there yet. We got to keep digging, right? And so we've got to keep working through and unpacking. Well, I didn't do the homework this week. That's good information. That's great information.
If you're a people pleaser, don't people please your people pleaser coach or your therapist, because that's what you've hired them for.
Absolutely. Now, is November a new thing? Saying no in November. Is this new? Because this is the first year I've heard of this.
This is the first year I've been the Nope coach. I only rebranded last month and I was like, this is perfect. So like my first email of the month was welcome to November. And I'm also a huge fan of Ted Lasso. Have either of you seen that?
I've heard of it, but not seen it. I've heard it's
oh my
good,
gosh.
though.
Yes. Take this, if anyone listening, if you look at it like me and go, oh, it's about soccer or football, depending on what country you're on. What on earth? No. It's a fantastic show. And there was this character in there who says no a lot. So I did a little meme with his picture. But yeah, saying no, because it frees you up for your true yes.
There's an integrity in being able to say no without fear. And there's an integrity to being able to say yes without fear. What it does is it builds in ourselves trust in ourselves. Because if I can trust myself to be able to say no and cope with whatever might come from saying no, right? Somebody else might not like me, or they might not invite me next time, or they might think I'm a horrible person because, and then I say, yes, I am. I'm Cruella DeVille. But they might, right? Like they might think bad of me. Oh my gosh. And if I can trust that, okay, if that happens, if the thing I'm afraid of happens, I'm going to be okay.
I've got me.
Then, yeah, that I've got me. I've got it. Then my gosh, we can say no and we can mean no, and we can say yes and we can mean yes. And I think it's such a there's a temptation sometimes to go full swing the opposite direction as well sometimes. And so that's why I love that you say, you know, let your yes mean yes, have a true yes as well as a true no.
Well, I love how you said, I'll circle back to they might not invite me next time, because that's such a common thing. So say, for example, I use this example a lot. I'm obsessed with Tupperware, but I don't really like it. So that's funny. But you're like, Suzanne, I'm having a Tupperware party on Saturday. Do you want to come? If I say yes and I can't stand Tupperware, and then on the day I'm like, sorry, Julie, I'm sick, and you've cleaned your house and prepared the food, isn't that actually more mean than being honest? But if my fear is like, well, Julie will never invite me to anything again, this is how I answer it. And obviously this takes time. Like I've had years practice of this. I'll be like, thank you so much for inviting me, Julie. I love that you love Tupperware. It's not actually my jam. Depending on how well I hate you, I know you, I can be really honest and say, actually, I hate Tupperware. Like my friends, I could say that and I know, but somebody I don't know so well. Like I love that you love it. It's not really my jam. If you have a candle party, I will be there with my credit card waving in the air. So it's like, it shows you will be invited, because sometimes you keep having Tupperware because you love it and I keep saying no. So you actually stop inviting me because you think, oh, Suzanne doesn't like me. Like you might be thinking that, whereas actually I don't like plastic. So it's like sometimes us being honest and saying that that's just not for me in whichever way, and how well you know the person, you can be the level of direct and let them know, but if it's this, I'm in, then that level of communication, because that fear is stated without being explicit, And then you'd be like, oh, okay, so Suzanne's not, I'll mark her as a no for these. The same as like movies. I have a very peculiar taste in movies. But if someone's like, do you want to see this? And I'm like, I'd love to come to a movie with you. I'm not really into Downton Abbey. Is there something else showing? So then we can both be fulfilled. Or we go, oh, actually, so like for my husband, we very rarely see a movie together, but Wakanda Forever has just come out. And I'm like, okay, you've got your audio. We'll get the kids in school. Let's go. Because that's something we'll see together. But most of the time we would not.
I love that. When we're honest about it, it depersonalizes it to, to ourselves and to the other person. There's assumptions that we make as humans because we're selfish, right? We think that things are all about us. And so when somebody says no to me, but without an explanation, or they say yes and then cancel at the last minute, right? Like a very tempting thought is, oh, it's me. They didn't want to see me. They didn't want to hang out with me, right? We're human. We have egos. We make things about ourselves. And so when we're honest about it and we say, no, like, I like you, like, let's go to dinner, or why don't you come over for snacks or something? But like, I don't want to buy any of your plates. Like, there's such honesty in that. And there's such an opportunity to learn about I laughed really hard when you said Tupperware party, because when did you have yours, Chrissa? Chrissa had a Tupperware party.
Like
forever ago.
I didn't even like Tupperware either, but I felt bad saying no to the person who wanted me to host a Tupperware party. So I was like, sorry.
Didn't want to say no to the person.
So I threw one.
So she threw one in her apartment. The Tupperware person came and I was invited to it. And I said, I'm going to come to it. Like, I'm going to come to it. You remember what I said? What did I say? I said, I'm going to come to it. I'm not buying anything. I'm not, like, am I still invited? Because I'm literally not buying anything. But I'm going to come to your party and eat the snacks and whatever. And I ended up winning a prize at it. So I left with something, but I wasn't going to buy anything. And I wanted to be really upfront about that. And so whenever there's like a Gel Street Nails online party, right? Or a Pampered Chef party online, and if somebody invites me or sends me a message to ask me to join it, I'll say, like, I'll go on it, and like, I like you, so I'll like the posts and I'll like answer the little quiz things because that gets it in other people's feeds. But you got to know, like, I'm not going to buy anything in here. And that, that is a yes, no, yes. That's a yes, I'll come to your party. No, I'm not going to buy anything, but yes, I can try to help you in this other way.
I love that, how you describe that, because you're like, I'll comment on your stuff, which for business, small business, boosts the feed. Like, it's so often people don't realize the ways that you can support business is beyond buying their thing, commenting on their posts, sharing their stuff, tagging somebody who you think might benefit from it. Is such a way to reward someone without it being monetary. And yeah, I just love that. You're like, I'm coming, but I'm not going to buy anything. Is another level of, nope. I love you, support you, want to eat your snacks because, you do great food, or we'll hang out afterwards. But I think sometimes we make so many assumptions and we make stories in our head about what other people are thinking because of an experience that's happened in the past or because of what we're thinking, and they're not thinking that at all. Like, so we're holding people to standards that they might not even know about. Very recently, someone wanted to have just a business cuppa. I was like, sure. And they're like, well, I've got you here. Can I ask you about your social media strategy? To which I just cracked up laughing. I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, how you like seed your children into your message. And I'm like, I don't have a social media strategy. I literally just post about my life. The strategy in my business is podcast guesting and newsletters. That's where I have strategy. But other than that, this is just my life. And I was like, isn't it funny? Someone's made an assumption and seen, like, and I'm sure they're not the only one. This is Suzanne's strategy. And it's like, I don't have one. So, when we ask a question, or even, as you said, you don't have to qualify, if you don't want to. You can just be like, no, hard stop, the end. That's awesome. But if you're having thoughts of they might never invite me again, or they might think I don't like them, then a little qualifier, but an honest one, not I'm feeling sick or the kids have something or whatever. Like, people smell that. It's like energetic BO. Whereas if you're like, my mum still tells me to this day, she's like, Suzanne, you're just too honest. Like, people don't like it. It's confronting. And I'm like, but I don't like it when someone says, I can't go because I need to remove the lint from inside my dryer. Like, that's basically
I'm washing
they
my
don't
hair
want
that
to.
night.
So
my favorite show in the world, Friends. One of my favorite Phoebe lines is when she says, "Oh, I would love to, but I don't want to."
Oh, I haven't watched that. I've only just started watching Friends recently, but I love that. But
she's like, "Oh, I can't because I don't want to."
There's a TV show here called Home and Away. It's a long-standing soap opera, and I know, do not ring her when that's on. Ever. The same as my mum. Don't ring her with the midday movies on. Like, I've got to look at the clock. Oh, it's between 12 and 2. Don't ring my mum. And if I did, she'd answer going, who's in hospital? Like, she would be like, there must be an emergency. And that's her boundary. And I respect that. And I think it's just knowing people's, and also that it's their job to communicate them to you, but also their job to uphold them. So a couple of times I have rang her and she's like, who's in hospital? Like, oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot. I'll ring you back and hang up. But, so yeah.
Absolutely. I love that it is a two-way street. And so we don't have to, I think sometimes there are conflicts in relationships because we'll go, okay, I got to set a boundary, and we'll set the boundary. And then somebody does not respect the boundary. And we're like, what I set the boundary for, right? And we get upset about it, or we get angry with that person for not respecting the boundary. And I think that the reason that anger comes is because it makes us feel powerless. We start to feel like I don't have any control over what happens to me in my life. And so when we talk about like, no, it is a two-way street. Yes, they have the responsibility to respect the boundaries that we set, but we have the responsibility to uphold the boundaries that we set. And so if your mom is a great example. She's upholding that boundary. She's not answering going, oh, what's going on? What's wrong? Oh, no, I'm just in the middle of, I was just watching a show, right? Mm-hmm. And she doesn't do that because that would be, when we do that, we don't intend to, but we become very passive aggressive, right? We're angry that they called us during this time, but we still go through and do it. We overgive by taking the phone call, right?
As I say, by answering. If she had a whole boundary, she could have her phone turned off or on silent, on airplane mode. Like, so for me personally, I am the business person who bucks the trend. I don't like DMs. Do not slide into my DMs. It's like, I just can't stand it. Email me. But if people do, I don't be like, oh, how dare they disrespect me or whatever. I'm just like, literally copy paste response. I have it on, what do you call that thing on your phone that makes an auto thing? I can just literally do it in a paste now. Thanks for your message. I don't respond to DMs. Please send this to my email link. And then I go about my merry way. If they keep doing it, then I can say, I've told you before, and if this keeps happening, I'll block you. And then it's up to me to, enforce that, uphold that. But it's a personal thing. I don't like DMs. They are reserved for memes, jokes, and whatever. Business for me is conducted on my email because I don't have email on my phone. That's another boundary I have. Where this has resulted from, one day my little son said to me, you love your phone more than me. And in that moment, my heart broke. And I was like, wow, he's right. I'm with my children, but I'm not with my children. And I did a lot of reflecting on that. I've taken email off my phone. I have email hours. And some people are like, oh, no, you didn't get back to me. There's no emergency in coaching, people. I'm not an emergency room. Coaching is deliberately, I've chosen this profession. I did do a medical science degree. I was going to be a doctor. And I was like, being on call sucks. Coaching is taking you from where you are to where you want to go. There's no, things come up, obviously, but they're not life-threatening. So if that's the case, you really shouldn't be reaching out to me anyway, because I'm not the best person to help in this situation. And I say that with love, not uncaring and cruel devil energy.
It's so true. It's so true in counseling. Also, we've got to have those boundaries in the session, and we've got to be able to say, if we get a text from a client about something hard that's happening, we've got to say and have that autoresponder and just say, I'll get back to you on Monday, or here are the available appointment times I have next week. Yeah, and if it's an emergency, please go to the nearest ER or call 911. We've got that script there because it's fair. It's fair to like, yeah, I can't do anything for that person. I cannot. And so if I'm continuing to act like I can, then I'm wasting that person's time when they could be going and getting help from somebody who can help them.
100%. Also, too, when things like reschedules or the policies that your therapist or coach or whoever has in place, sometimes we can feel like when they uphold that, that they don't care or they don't this. But when we overstep that, we're enabling, we're not helping, we're not being in service. And also, if sessions go over, then we have the next client who's waiting, or we have our own downtime. And, that whole fit your oxygen mask first is true. And then I don't want to be the arbiter of which thing is okay for me to overgo my boundary and start late or go over with a session or whatever, and which thing isn't. That's exhausting. And we were talking about, overgiving versus generosity. So it's like, this is the guideline, hard stop, the end. No exceptions. And that's taken me a long time, because in the beginning of my coaching, packages that were 6 months become 18 months because I just let people skip sessions and I let people not turn up and I let people push it out. Like, I will own that. I didn't uphold the boundary. But what I learned was they weren't getting the results because I was enabling and not coaching. Mm-hmm. So from coach energy, I have these things in place for a reason. And I don't back down on them.
Absolutely. And as a coach or as a therapist, when we enable, it's not only that we're enabling a behavior towards us, we're also enabling a behavior in general, right? So it turns into, well, why did my dentist get so mad? What's wrong with him when I no-showed? My therapist doesn't mind, right? Like, yes. My coach doesn't mind. She's nice to me when I cancel at the last minute or forget the appointment, right? And so we're enabling not only the behavior
in one area of your life.
but in general, because that's what we're there to help you with. So if we're not helping with it, and we're saying, oh, that's okay, it happens, no big deal. Well, then we're having, and I think that something that gets missed sometimes with boundary setting is that we don't always understand or fully embrace that we can be empathetic and we can be kind and we can be caring while we're upholding a boundary. And I think that in our society, it's one or the other, right? Like, I'm either doing the nice, helpful thing or I'm not.
It's the extremist black and white archetype that many of us fall into. And like, for me, I'm not sure what your guys' policy is, but my sessions usually go for an hour. I will be on Zoom for 15 minutes. Then I will jump off and send a message. If for whatever reason they message me back, like, I'll have my phone available and they want to jump on and have a 15-minute session, that is by all means okay with me, because I think sometimes learning that lesson to prioritize. And what do people pleasers do? They don't prioritize themselves. I'm late because I had to pick up my kids. I'm late because I had to drop off my mum's medicine. Like, let's spend this 15 minutes focusing on that, because you're not, just because you've hired the therapist or coach or whatever, isn't the magic answer to, well, I've hired the person who specializes in that, I'm fixed. You're not broken. But like, this is what we work through. So like, having the clear communication of what happens if the session is late, and like, there isn't any makeups, but sure, I'll jump on and do 15 minutes. That's power coaching. Let's see what we can do. But often it's, let's coach on why you were late to this, so that it doesn't happen again, and we break this pattern of behavior that isn't serving you, rather than something else. And that's been some of the most powerful things, because recently I went to the hairdresser, and I walked in and I had the appointment, and anyway, she was on the phone or something, and she had this no-show, and all I was thinking as a fellow business owner was, now they have a spot that's empty. They don't make money. It's not like people who work a 9 to 5, you get paid anyway. Mm-hmm. And when we don't show up, or when we don't have, yes, we're all stuck in our own story, but this is a business that the other person is running. So what are we doing to them when we turn up late, don't show, and don't value their time? So it's a really important lesson.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. When our product is minutes, and somebody doesn't use the minutes they bought, that doesn't mean they didn't buy those minutes. They bought those minutes. They just didn't use them.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you go to the supermarket and you buy a loaf of bread and you don't eat it, so it goes moldy, do you go back and say, sorry, I didn't like this bread, I didn't get a chance to eat it, can I have a refund, or can I have another loaf?
I forgot I had this bread.
Can you imagine the response the supermarket would give you? Like, and also, you would never try that. But with a service provider who's, as you said, charging you minutes, well, they've got more minutes. It's like an unlimited supply. And it's like time is the one thing that we don't have. And we never know how much we do have. So no.
Love it. And I love that so no. I love that. So Suzanne, we'd love to hear, thank you so much for being with us today. I feel like we could have filled 4 episodes. So
I know, we never even had like your counseling experience.
We'd love to have you back another
have
time.
me back. Yes, I'd love to talk about that because, as I said in the pitch, and for anybody listening, I come from a family who doesn't believe in mental health. They'll be like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And even when my son, like both my children, I'm open about that now, do have therapists. My son kind of let it slip. I hid it from my family, and he said he calls her his emotions doctor. I think that's so cute.
Aww.
He's like, oh, when I saw my emotions doctor, and my parents are like, what? And I'm like, his therapist. Why do you have him in therapy? Like, if you're a good mum, your kid wouldn't need therapy. And I was like, let's talk about that. But I think making mental health as a priority, as if we had a gaping wound or a physical obvious to the eye injury, is something that I'm really passionate about.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you back to talk about that as well. So Suzanne, thank you so much for being here. And we will link the information for your program, Why Wait, as well as your website and how people can find you so that everybody can get in contact with you.
I'm Suzanne Culberg, and I need a counselor.
Awesome. Me too. So does Chrissa. We can all benefit. And I have a counselor and I have a coach, and it is absolutely, it becomes a necessity at certain points of our lives. So wonderful.
Oh, 100%. I do too. My counselor listens to me cry and pats me on the shoulder, and my coach asks me the hard questions that often send me over to the counselor. So it works really well.
Symbiotic relationship there. Wonderful. Thank you so much. If you are listening, any in the world, go ahead and get in contact with Suzanne for Why Wait, and she is the NOPE coach. If you are in Iowa and you're looking for outpatient mental health counseling or in-home behavioral health counseling for kids, give us a call at 800-531-4236.
And like Julie mentioned at the beginning of the episode, we post new episodes every Sunday night at 5 p.m. Central Time. So save up your laundry or whatever task you hate doing that week and listen to us at the same time. And we can help convince you to reach out to your counselor and get scheduled, or reach out to our guests that week and set up services with them as well. And if you have any questions for us, you can reach out to us on Facebook at You Need a Counselor Podcast, or on our Instagram at You Need a Counselor Podcast on there as well. So I'm Chrissa Hunt.
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
And so do you.
Bye.